me? Can you all hear me fine? Great. I'm not used to a lapel mic. It's a whole new world for me. It feels very fancy. So I'm Savannah Amerson. I'm Regional Vice President of Sales with Cravat Inc. I am a proud member of the Atlanta community, although my family spends a lot of our time in South Carolina. And we're so excited to be here to help co-host Get Down to Business. And I'm especially pleased to have the honor this morning to participate in conversation with Dennese Rojas and Chris Goddard, two amazing, incredibly talented designers. And I think you're going to really get a lot out of what they can share with us all today, and hopefully some laughs along the way. And with that, I will pass the proverbial mic to Dennese to introduce herself, and then Chris, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is my first Get Down to Business here in Atlanta, so I'm looking forward to doing this here. I am the owner of Interiors by Design, which is in the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, Virginia region. I've been in the industry for over 22 years. I stopped counting. And I do residential, multifamily, and some commercial work. And I always share that if you don't like what you're doing, find your passion and do it. And I love what I do every single day. I look forward to doing it.
And to me. Hi, guys, and welcome. I'm Chris Goddard. This is my 35th year of interior design, which is a little bit scary. I can't believe I'm still here doing this and still talking about it. And it's been a really wonderful journey that I'm looking forward to sharing with y'all today. I'm based right now in Northwest Arkansas, but I also have offices in Palm Beach and Aspen, so we can kind of talk about growth and how that affects a small business, because how does, country comes to town from Arkansas end up this year I was named International Interior Designer of the Year by the Royal Academy in London, and part of the AD 100. Also was on a fun little show called Design Star on HGTV, if any of y'all saw it, along with Justin, who's in the audience. So if you haven't seen it, tune into HGTV. I can keep hawking stuff all day long, so I'll quit talking. What else you got to sell, Chris? But anyway, I'm looking forward to sharing my journey from age 22. We don't talk about it, but just add 35 to that on how to stay relevant in the world of interior design and constantly be changing and evolving. I kind of look at myself like Cher. You're always developing, reinventing yourself, coming up with something new, trying to keep your audience engaged and your clients engaged. And again, I talk too much, so back to you. Please stop me anytime.
Okay, I'll jump in and try to take the reins. So we had a great dinner last night. It was so much fun getting together, and I had prepared, like a good moderator, my questions and my note cards. And this morning, as I reviewed them, I kind of said to myself, I might as well literally throw these over my shoulder. We're just going to ride this train, but I am going to hold on to them in case I need to get myself anchored back a little bit. But we're here to talk about business, and in particular, business development, business planning, and how to, your paths, how you have come up with different ways to get to success. In our industry, we have so many different models, and I think with some of the conversations we had last night, we'll definitely loop back to on that topic. So Dennese, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got your start in design?
Well, I would say that I started off I went to school for design, and I never did anything with it. And I worked in corporate America for a little bit, and I took on a project to help someone in between my corporate work and design. And I took on a project and realized that I was more focused and more interested in that project than I was in my corporate job. So I realized that I needed to find my way back into the design industry. And so fortunately, I was laid off from my job, and I took advantage of that and decided to create my own future. And at the time, my daughter was about 3. And I knew that it gave me flexibility for myself to be able to be there when I needed to be there for her. And it gave me the opportunity to follow my passion. When I started, I made a promise to myself that I would never work in corporate America again, ever. I just don't understand corporate America. I don't understand the rules and how to play the game in that sandbox. So I continued to pursue it. And I mean, with everything in life, there's ebb and flow. And I decided to kind of do my research and surround myself with other designers in a supportive way to grow that business. And so from there, I continued on that path and that journey, and I enjoyed it. And I did my research, and I attended seminars, and I got information, just like this one is, to help grow things. And I remember I went to one seminar in our area where they had a speaker, and it was around this time of year, and he asked the one question, and he said, how many of you are working on current projects for this year? And there was a show of hands, and how many people are working on projects for next year? And there was probably one hand raised. And I realized in that seminar that this is a time that you have to project what you want to do for next year. This year's over. So every year around this time for myself, I take note right after Labor Day weekend, and I get into a place where, what have I done this year that I need to improve on for next year? From contracts to website to image to everything. And I kind of really delve deep in that and kind of reinvent the wheel to take myself to the next level. I always say to my team, the universe forces you to take the next steps on your journey, whether you're ready for it or not. And it's to pay attention.
Yeah.
You continue to walk into dead walls when you're not really paying that attention, and it comes at you in different formats. So I usually try to get my antennas going.
I love how you took that opportunity of what could be just a really crushing moment of, being laid off even from a job you don't love, and to see that as an opportunity and an opening to move forward in your career and in your planning. Chris, how about you? Where did you get your start?
Mine was a little different as a child. I always knew I wanted to do something creative, and I grew up in a very modern home with everything that was built in. I was constantly rearranging my Farrah Fawcett posters, et cetera, around my bedroom because that's all we were able to move around because everything was built in. And when it was time to go to school, my parents wanted me to get a business degree, and I was like, I don't want to do business. I want to do design. And keep in mind, it was the 80s. It was a different time. And design was in the home ec department, and it wasn't. It was a totally different world. No computers, no technology. We did everything by hand. So I began a business degree and then went to my grandmother and begged her, and she paid with her grocery money for me to get a degree in interior design, so I graduated with both. But when I graduated, my grandfather was like, wait, what? You got an interior design degree? How did you do that? And my grandmother came clean, and he said, well, here's the deal. You've got 1 year before you have to come home and start to be a bank teller. Now, as a creative, I can't think of anything worse in the world than being a frickin' bank teller all day long. So they gave me a little bit of seed money, and I happened to be in the right town at the right place in Northwest Arkansas. And I was doing store windows at that time, and a lady came in and she said, wow, these are amazing. And I was like, oh, thanks. My name's Chris, blah, blah, we're all always selling in this business. And she said, will you come do my bookcases? And I was like, oh, sure. And then that led to her hiring me to do her entire house. She owned a huge company, their company, and then I signed a 9-year exclusive with them to do their stuff all over the world. But the point of that story is that within that year, I had worked hard enough to have that house photographed and published in Architectural Digest at age 21, which was kind of unheard of. That's back before we had social media, before we had anything. And to this day, I'm still the youngest person ever in Architectural Digest. And the whole belief in that is that you have to believe in yourself. And this is a little country kid from Arkansas who had no fear. So I always talk about the young designers is don't be afraid. Put yourself out there, take chances, don't ever say no. Once you get into something, you can say, hey, this isn't a good fit. But always be open to trying new things. Even like I'm a very established designer, and when I went on HGTV, everybody's like, why in the world are you doing this? This is going to ruin your career. And what it did is it recharged me because I tried something new. And I think the older we get, we tend to get in a rut. And I was getting in a rut because I had been doing this for 35 years, and I pushed myself way outside my comfort zone, which I think is really hard for a lot of us. because we all tend to get real comfortable in what we do and doing the same thing and working with the same clients, and life becomes a routine. So I'm constantly pushing myself way outside of my comfort zone, and going on television forced me to do that in front of the whole freaking world, which was a little horrifying. Because the comments are really nice. You learn a lot from that too, not to listen to other people and not to be scared of anything. But again, the whole point is to constantly push yourself outside your comfort zone. Try new things. Take on a client that you think might be a little more challenging. Kind of the mantra of my firm, and we talked a little bit about this last night, is I never use the same piece of fabric twice. I never use the same piece of furniture twice. So think about over 30-something years never using the same thing twice, which really pushes you outside of your comfort zone. Because in my mind, why is Tammy down the street getting the same sofa that Susie is? Just because she wants it, because she wants to be like her friend. You know, Karl Lagerfeld once said, trendy is the last stop before tacky. So if you get on the trendy bus and you keep doing the things that you do, you're going to end up losing clients because you're going to be known for a look. And the kiss of death for any designer, and I've done this a long time with lots of famous interior designers, after 4 or 5 years, because they were so locked into a look that they couldn't get out of, they only were known for that. And as we all know, doing this, taste is like this, and it cycles. And if you don't keep up with the cycles, you're going to become irrelevant. And I learned that really early on. I was very observant of what was happening around me. And, you know, if you're doing what you were doing 3 years ago, you're doing something wrong. And that is in business, in design, in life. You have to constantly evolve. You know, the motto in my office is evolve or dissolve. You know, you have to constantly be changing the way you look at things, your taste level, educating yourself. I mean, I love coming to things like this where we can learn from everybody. I used to find that the design world wasn't very sharing, and it was hard. And, you know, in the before times when we didn't have the internet, I used to have to go out and actually talk to people, which my office finds shocking that people speak and don't email. And I still do that because that's how we learn, is from other designers and asking questions. So don't be afraid to ask. You know, I'll go somewhere and see something beautiful. I'll be like, who made that? How do I get a hold of them? How do I find this out? And I find that most designers are intimidated sometimes by the world of design, because it is overwhelming, because we're bombarded daily with images of what we should be. And I don't pay a lot of attention to social media. I have to do some of it because, you know, it's just the rules, I guess. But you can get yourself locked into this bottle of trying to keep up with everybody else and losing track of what you're doing, because people are hiring you because of you, not because of what somebody else is doing. So don't ever let that get in your head, and that's, you know, this is years of therapy. But a lot of therapy. But this is years of learning not to worry about what others said, and I'll wrap this up. But she's like, please wrap it up. Because Chris will talk the whole time. But when I was a little kid, kids would pick on me, and my mom and I would come home crying, and my mom said, you need to cry when they stop talking about you. And those words have stuck with me my whole life, because that's when you worry you're not relevant anymore. So if people are talking about you, good or bad, hey, at least they're talking.
So I think this is the part where I was saying, you know, I knew I was going to have to just like throw these note cards over my shoulder, because there's so much for us to dig into. I mean, you just put like our whole presentation into.
And I talk a lot. So
No,
just if somebody has a bell, just ring it, and I'll stop. So.
One of the things that I do want to ask y'all, you know, that you bring up, Chris, is, you know, a couple of things. I mean, one is marketing. You mentioned early on your very first big project, and it's a very, you know, exclusive, private, confidential project, but you decided to do it to the nines and to photograph it and be prepared for that. You know, did y'all early in your careers, was that part of your planning, and did you have that consciousness that you needed to invest early on in a marketing strategy to grow your business?
I grew up in the world of magazines, and that's how I learned as a designer. I know some of us are a little older, and we remember the wonderful days of getting stacks of design magazines, and that's how we got inspired. And design was based then on talent and what you did, not how many likes you got, because there's a huge difference between design and influencer. So in the before times, that's what I call them in my office, I would go through magazines, dog-ear the pages, and I knew that to become successful, you needed to be printed. And being printed now isn't as big a deal. You know, you need to put yourself out there. And I always, if you get asked to be in anything, it's a start. So anytime your work can be published, say yes. Never say no, no matter what it's in, because your name at least gets out there, and then you never know who's going to see it. I've been in huge publications from World of Interiors down to local, you know, Dollar Saver magazines, because, you know, I just want my name out there. I always, you know, I'll say I'm like Tinkerbell. If people quit clapping, I die. So I have to constantly put myself out there, and I highly recommend that to you. But starting out, I knew that to be successful, you had to have name recognition, because people want to hire what? A name, and usually that name comes from seeing yourself in print, social media, or referrals. And referrals are the biggest source of business for me. And it takes a lot to build up those referrals. So pay attention to your clients. Marketing is hard. Print used to be the way to go. Now we find we get more from Instagram. It depends on your demographic too. I mean, my clients skew a little older. They're over 40, and they're not on TikTok and all these younger ones. They're on, God, I sound like my mom, don't I? The young people. But they're not on these other apps. They're more on Facebook or Instagram. So know your market, or what markets you want to attack. And I think it's really key to go after that. I went after print really heavy. In my world, I signed a lot of NDAs, and y'all may come against that. So I spent 9 years with never being published after that one, because I got hired by a family that didn't want to be published. So that was hard, because when that contract ended, I had to reinvent myself again and start this process over again. Because as we all know, every day is a new day in the world of technology, press, how to get yourself out there. But I do think the biggest waste of money is print and advertising. I used to say, hey, advertise, do all that, but your return on your investment is going to be so small on that. It's word of mouth, and get yourself somebody young that knows how to use the heck out of social media. And what do you think, Denise?
I agree with what you're saying. You really need to figure out your demographics and who your client base is. And once you figure that out, that's a key part of the journey. At one point in my life, I owned a retail store, and I remember having the same issue that Chris is speaking about, having to do with TikTok and various things. And I remember back then, which was over 10 years ago, I used to do mailers when I had sales, and I used to have my mom sticking, licking, doing everything to get the stuff out on a regular basis. We had sales regularly, and I remember when I said to a young lady that came into my store, and she shared with me, she says, we told her that we were going to do email, mass mailing for sales, and she's like, your client is not connected with that. The person that's spending money in your store, they're not, the income ratio is not there for you to do emails. So, I mean, it's a lot different now, but it's to really find out what's going on out there and what's captivating the market that you want to target, and know your audience that you want to reach out to and deal with, and learn the next steps as things evolve, because that universe is going to ring that bell, and you pretty much have to listen. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in that rut.
So Denise, how did you identify who your target audience was? How did you identify what kinds of projects, what kinds of clients you wanted to work with?
Well, a couple things happened to me as I traveled my journey from opening a store to being able to have that advertising from that perspective, for people walking in, liking the product that I had on the floor, and hiring me from that perspective. I remember I ran into someone after I closed my store because the economy had changed, and he said, you look different. I was less stressed. But he says, you look so different. But the thing about it is that was another platform for me, and it's kind of, you know, that had its run for me, and then I was I was in our area that really didn't have a retail presence for home furnishings. So I was always amazed the clientele that came into my store. When they walked in, it was interesting from that perspective in a good way, because I reached out to people that I always say I'm not that important. I usually say to people, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm a squirrel gathering nuts. And so for me, I just love what I do, and being able to enjoy what you do makes all the difference in the world. And so for me as well, I don't think I'll ever retire. I will do this with going into a casket, because it's just there for me. It satisfies me every day. And when you have younger people around you, and my crew is younger, I always talk to them like, I'm never going to age, and they will get older. So, I mean, and just finding that path and being able to connect with your clientele base, it's word of mouth, it's people who've seen your work, it's being published, it's taking things to the next level as far as the big picture is concerned. And don't be afraid to take chances. I think I take chances with so many things. The one thing that I struggle with is buying a car. I take chances with everything. Cars.
Except cars.
Cars, I'll come back. I need to rest on this one.
So I think it's interesting. So I love that you said you're a squirrel gathering nuts. And Chris, you also have come up with a very pithy, brief way to kind of elevator pitch what Goddard Design does as well. How important has that been to your businesses to get to that point that you can define and communicate clearly to potential clients what working with you is about?
Well, I've always known this word is my least favorite word, and let's all try and avoid this word. It's called brand. And I think we need to think more of it as an aesthetic. And when people say, what's your brand? I think brand is so limiting. And having spent, Justin can testify, all day long, brand, what's your brand, what's your brand? And we all have an aesthetic, and that's what people are hiring us for. And my aesthetic has always been timeless, elegant, curated, eclectic. We don't do the same thing twice, so I never really fit into a box. We do everything from ultra modern to, I just won the international award for a chateau I did. So you have to be able to have a lot of depth and breadth to your work. And I think I talked a little bit about this, but don't put yourself in a box ever. Because the moment you tell a client you do this, that's all you're ever going to be known for. You have to be able to show up and say, I can do it all. And if you can't, you figure out how the heck you're going to do it.
Yep.
And that's the way I did it. And there was no internet. So I was like, oh, sure, I can do postmodernist brutalism. What the heck is that? You got to go to the library, look it up, do some research. You figure it out. But if you're a designer and a creative, you're going to figure it out. So, your elevator pitch should be talking about your aesthetic. So don't ever get locked into the word brand, because brand is so limiting. And it's trending real heavy now. And everybody's like, what's your brand? What's your brand about? It's more about what's your aesthetic. And if it's quality, if it's color, if it's, whatever it is that you carry through your design, because good design is about a consistent thread that runs through all of your projects. Whether it's like with me, where I always make sure there's one antique and the room tells a story, whether it's modern or traditional. You always have to have one consistent thread, because the biggest insult to you as a designer is for their friends to come over and go, oh, this looks like Buffy Joe's Interiors did your house. That should look like the client that came in. They should go, oh my God, this house looks just like you. And to me, that's the biggest compliment. I don't want anybody ever coming in going, oh my God, this is a Chris Goddard house. I want them to come in and go, oh my God, Barbara Ann, this is you, girl. We have nailed it. And so that it looks like they did it. I think that is our work as designers, is to create spaces that reflect the client and not us. Because if it keeps looking like you, it means you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And then it becomes repetitive. And I know I've beat this horse to death, but please don't be doing the same thing over and over.
That's true. I feel like another great word that's often overused in the last year or so is authenticity and being authentic.
Yes.
It's definitely bandied about a lot, but I also believe both of you have very authentic themes and authentic work. So what does that mean for you, your work?
I think a lot of it has to do with your footprint. And I always share with my clients that I'm not moving in. The home has to be a reflection of them. And so working with your client and trying to get into their world and being a really good listener is really crucial in what you do with your work for them.
And for authenticity for me is making sure that you're giving the client the best that their budget allows. And I'm not, there's different kinds of design. There's back the truck up design where you're filling a house. And then there is regular design, it's awful. And then there are design where you're educating your client and it becomes a process. And they feel like they're part of the process, because what you want to do as a designer is have that client long-term, not for 6 months. So the more you educate your client into quality and kind of guide them on a path of what they really love and teach them it's better to buy one fabulous thing at a time than 10 things that aren't, you're not only helping your client, but you're helping your business, because then they're going to come to you when the budget allows and say, oh, okay, now we're ready to do the family room. Okay, now we've done that. Now we're doing the living room. You know, and the key to that is education, doing one space at a time to the best of their budget, because if you take that money and blow it all over the house and nothing's done, they're not going to come back to you because they're going to feel like you didn't do your job. So learning to wrangle in your client, which is hard sometimes because everybody gets excited, educating them on quality and teaching them just to take their time and buy things that are going to last. I mean, we live in such a disposable economy and a disposable world that another big part of my authenticity, not my brand, is like we call it the inheritable home. And there's a section in that on my website where I talk about it, where you want things that you want to leave to your children or family members, where things feel like something they want, not something that's going to end up in a garage sale.
So you mentioned the B word, budget, which is always an interesting process. So are you guys ready to open up a little bit? On one of the topics we talked about last night, which is how you handle budgets and billing in your businesses.
I'll start.
Okay.
That gets to be really the word that your client skirts around. And I want to say more and more as I look at evolving and looking at things for next year, it's the one thing that I've kind of trained my team to be a little bit more conscious of when they take calls from people that are inquiring for services. I work two different ways with my clients. I work either on a flat fee basis or on an hourly basis. And recently, House Beautiful came out with an article, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I think it's really helpful to everyone. I was giving it out at House Beautiful's party. You must have this, you must have this. For anyone that was struggling, that were designers that would ask questions, it was from Business of Home, Caitlin Peterson,
Okay.
wrote the article. And it was it was done with different regions, what the rates are, and helping your clients come up with budgets for stuff. Because you ask them, well, do you have a budget? And they, well, I've thought about it, but I really don't know. I've never done this before. The one thing that I do is I usually give clients or potential clients references of other clients that I've worked with, so that they can kind of get a sense of what that journey is like working with me. If I'm a designer that has an attitude, or if I'm really easygoing, or if I'm workable, depending on how things are. And pretty much share with them the difference between a sofa that's $1,400 or a sofa that's $25 or beyond. So you kind of have to educate your client from that perspective, because when you start working with a client that doesn't want to share a budget with you, you end up being so frustrated, and then they become frustrated, and then it becomes a negative review for you. So keeping a client, in a place where you can work together and share that information. And when you get the money situation out of the way, like they say, money makes everything funny. So if you get that out of the way, it's helpful for you to have a really good working relationship with your client. The article that Caitlin has shared talks about different regions of what rates are on an hourly basis for clients, what the designers are charging. And I remember in part of it, it says that when you're helping clients with budgets, it should be 18%. That's the average of what their house costs. So it kind of gets a little scary when you start to do some calculations, but it's the article to have. I walk with it on my phone now, by the way, to share.
That's awesome. Makes me think of what you said, Brene Brown, who I love, in her phrase, clear as kind. That, there's kindness in sharing the truth, even if it's a difficult truth to deliver. How do you handle these conversations and your work, Chris?
Well, if you don't listen to anything I say today, this is a word you need to remember. And this is the way you have to reprogram your brain in dealing with clients. We don't use the word budget anymore. We use the word investment. And when you start using that word, it's a lot easier to deal with clients. So instead of going up to a client and saying, hey, what's your budget? I'm like, what would you like to invest in your home? And then it changes the way their brain works and how they think. They're like, oh, wait, we're putting money into the home, and they're seeing value in that. So about 3 years ago, I started using the word investment instead of budget, and clients' eyes kind of open up because the people we're dealing with are wealthier, more successful, and they look at things as an investment or a loss. And budget to them is always a bad word, as it is to all of us. We all hate that word, budget, and I do a lot of commercial work. It's called value engineering, are my least favorite words of all times. But when I learned to rephrase things and put it in that way, people start to get it a little more. So when you talk about what do you want to invest in your home, people kind of go back and go, oh, wait, this is an investment in what I'm doing. And what do I want to do that's going to last? And I think during the pandemic, people have realized the importance of investing at home because all of us have seen people now wanting to spend more money because now they realize the importance of quality, of comfort, because there was so little time spent in the home that being in your home now is a lot more important and being comfortable in that space. And money is an awkward conversation no matter what we're talking about in life, but it's one you have to have. My other big rule is that when you have that conversation, if you're dealing with a couple, have both of them at the room when you're talking about money. The biggest trouble, and Lord knows I've been in a lot in 30 years of doing this, is when you're dealing with a wife or a husband and a husband or whatever their situation is, you're dealing with one, and they're not clear with the other on what's being spent. And then it becomes this circle of blame, and the person always at fault is the designer because we're the first thrown under the bus every frickin' time. So always be clear with both partners or everyone in your budget meetings when you talk about money. And be very honest about it. Say, hey, you set this budget, you need to allow 20% for overages because there will be surprises. We all know that. I think the biggest thing now we're all dealing with is freight, which none of our clients understand. They see the freight charges and they flip out on me. Cost of goods have gotten crazy. And you just have to tell your clients and be honest. I mean, they're watching the news. They know what's going on. And we're all in this to make a living. We're not doing it for our health. And, you have to be really clear, this is my job. And the longer we've done it, the more you should get paid because experience is part of it. And I charge a ton. So, and when clients come to me, that's what they expect. And, the way I charge is a percentage of the project. And plus hourly after that. And we used to charge a flat fee, and flat fees don't work because you spend more hours, and once those hours are gone, then you can't charge anymore. So always put in your contract. A lot of my designer friends charge by square foot, by this, by that. And because we have no industry standard and nobody wants to ever talk about what they charge, which makes no sense to me because we're all in this together. Because when it boils down to the end of the day, we're all charging about the same, but we're just all phrasing it differently, which gets us into trouble too because clients get confused. And when our clients are confused, then they don't trust us or the industry, which I've found. So I charge cost plus 30, which is pretty much the industry standard. And then we charge full retail on smaller items. And clients expect that. In my office, we always go online, and if it's available, we see what the price is online, and we never exceed that because with the wonderful invention of Google search, they can drop whatever image you've put on your thing and say, oh, well, I can get it from God forbid, Wayfair for much less. And I'm like, please knock yourself out and you deal with the broken leg and the shipping and the, you have to put value in your service. And when you start underselling yourself to make less money, it makes no sense to me. I would much rather sell a $10,000 piece of furniture and make 30% that's super quality than a $6,000 piece of furniture and make full markup that's less quality, because you're making the same margins. So you have to kind of step back and go, well, I could make more money by selling nicer things and charging less than selling lesser quality things and charging full markup. Because if you look at the dollars, they're the same. And it took me a while to figure that out, because you're going to make the same on a $6,000 sofa that you're making 3 on, and a $10,000 sofa you're making 3 on. Your client gets a better quality product. You look better to the client, and the photographs look better, and it's just better all around. So when you're working on budgets with clients, really take time and step back and see where the most value is, where you're going to make money. And most of us want to make money on our time and our product. And it's gotten really hard because people are going to undercut you. And a lot of times that's fine. We get 3 to 5 calls a day for projects, and the wonderful power of no. And it's okay to let people go. If they can't afford you or don't want to spend the money, I always say it's not me, it's you. And it's a real simple breakup, because as we know, there's plenty of talented designers out there and lots of wonderful clients. So.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
One of the things that I learned as well when I first started, piggying back onto what Chris is saying, there's lots of designers, but you also have to value yourself. And the power of no is a powerful word, because a lot of times when you're able to say no, it's a situation that it elevates you to the next level with yourself, and it builds that trust within yourself that you can also handle other things that are coming your way. The same energy that it will take for you to sell a $10,000 sofa will take to sell a $8,000 sofa. So just value yourself from that perspective. I think it's the one thing that's very helpful as you go through the process.
Don't undersell yourself to make an extra $20. It is not worth it.
Yeah.
And they will suck the joy out of your life, as we all know.
Yeah.
And the cheaper
They
the
will.
client, the more stressed they are, I swear.
That's very true.
Bible,
That's
it is the
very true.
truth. So,
How important have the industry relationships been for y'all in building your businesses with other designers, with vendors, subcontractors? What does the relationship network look like for you?
I love what I do, but I love working with other designers. I love sharing my information and my path. I think it fills my heart to be able to share with other people the journey that helps them on their journey. It's my way of giving back. The trade relationships that I've built, I've known a lot of my reps for a very, very long time. A lot of them have been retiring lately. But I've known a lot of them for a very long time, and that's been important for me, because one of the things in kind of piggybacking onto the fact of selling good quality stuff, when you have relationships with good manufacturers and good vendors, you're able to call them if you have a problem. When you sell cheap stuff, there's no one you can call, and that's a headache that you have to deal with your client on your own accord. Relationships, they matter as far as things are concerned. And you're able to, do good jobs from being able to have really nice working relationships, and being, one of my reps who told me, oh, you need to get a bigger store. And I did that just based on him telling me that. So he's retired though.
and my point is, please pick up the phone and don't email everybody. The way you get to know your reps is to call them and talk to them and take 30 minutes out of your day to meet with them when they come to your office, because they are your connection to what you need. They are the ones that can help you get it. If you have a good relationship with them, they're going to remember, oh, well, they took time out of the day to visit with me, or they picked up the phone. I mean, the young people in my office want to email. And so many of my reps are like, we get so many emails a day, but people will pick up the phone if you call them. And I'm from the generation of a phone call, and a phone call gets you more than anything else in the world in this business, because you've got them on the line. You can say, hey, is this in stock? Is this available? How can you help me? So just pick up the phone and call somebody, I think is the key. And that's my big advice on this, because we all send out a zillion emails and then you have to wait. If you call, you're going to get an answer right away. And if you have a good relationship with your rep, you're going to get a better, quicker answer. And plus, you're going to get included in more, and they're going to think of you first because you're building a relationship, which I think is key to this whole deal. And as far as working with other designers, that's how we get our energy. I mean, being surrounded with creative people fires all of us up. And it's not really competitive. It's just that energy we get that we take on from surrounding ourselves with others. Doing this show on HGTV, I felt like a new person after I left, because I saw a whole world of, I mean, I was 35 years older than everybody else. So, hey, just the learning curve of all this young energy refired and reignited my passion for design. And in your office or your firm, I always say, hire the youngest and the brightest you can afford, because you're going to learn a lot from them. In my office, I have 8 designers under me, and I always look for the best and the brightest and the smartest and the most talented. And take your time when you're hiring people. Don't rush into it just because they're cute or have a fun personality. Make sure they know what they're doing. But I learn more from working with other designers and collaborating, because being a team, there's something really wonderful to it. And I think it's really selfish of designers to say, oh, well, I did this whole room myself, because we all know none of us did it by ourselves. It takes carpenters, painters, vendors. It takes an army to create a beautiful space. And those people don't ever get credit. And if you don't have good relationships with those people or give them credit, they're not going to want to work with you. So I'm big on handing out credit, working with others, and acknowledging them when I do things.
Well, I think we're getting the nod that we've got to wrap up.
Have we talked that long already? Oh, mainly me, I'm sorry.
So could we do one last brief? You both have talked so much about evolution and being open to new opportunities and taking risks. What's one new thing on the horizon for you that is changing your business?
I'm really trying to get into multifamily. And I feel that there's a lot of money in multifamily work. And so I've done all spectrums. I've kind of traveled the globe in the industry. So in our area, there's a lot of multifamily stuff going on. So that's my focus for next year. I've done a little, but I want to do a lot more.
Do more. Good. Chris?
We run 40 to 62 projects a year out of my firm, which is a lot. You wonder how I sleep, right? I don't. And right now we're at 61, which is a lot. And we work all over the globe, which is a little scary and hard. And because of the pandemic, 30% of my work is out of the country. So I haven't been able to travel and go check on those projects. So what I'm most excited about is hopefully things opening up and me getting to travel again and go check on my clients who are living in, homes that aren't finished and places that aren't done. And last year was such an amazing year for me, because I got to do all kinds of crazy things during a pandemic that most people don't ever get the opportunity to be on TV, all kinds of other stuff. So, I'm like a goof. I wake up in a new world every day. Let's just see what's going to happen today. Because in design, we don't ever have the same day twice, and I think that's why we all love what we do, because it changes every single day.
Awesome. Well, thanks for starting this day with us. Oh, we do? Great. All right, are there any questions for Denise and Chris? Yeah. Shout it out, girl.
Oh, my bee story. So my logo's the bee, and everybody thought, oh, that's a Gucci bee, a Napoleonic bee, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've had the bee for 35 years. And the bee, one, was a pin that my grandmother wore to church every Sunday with me. But the story about a bee is that a bee's body is bigger than its wings, and it shouldn't be able to fly. But against all odds, it can fly. So when I started my business when I was 21, nobody told me I was going to make it. So I thought, what is the perfect symbol for believing in yourself and believing in the strength to fly? So I chose the bee, because if you believe in yourself and believe you can really do what you're going to do, you're going to be like that little chunky bumblebee and take flight. And I have not stopped flying and not looked back. So that's why I kind of use that as my logo.
Yeah.
That's a new one. The hardest lesson I learned, and as designers, all of us are so eager to do things, anything you have to pay for probably isn't a good deal. If somebody comes to you and offers for you to be in a magazine or be featured or be on a website, but you have to pay for it, it's not too legit. All the good thing, yeah, it's free. Okay, then it would be good. Right.
Right, with your reps.
Yeah, because you're not getting a relationship with your reps. Yeah, so I
And
think.
you're building their buying power.
Yeah, and you're actually helping them more than you're helping yourself. So, yeah. So it's not helping you as much as it's helping them. So, and that's kind of like with press. If anything, if it's free and they come to you and say, hey, we'd love to publish you. And I always go, what's the catch? And if they go, there is no catch, it's legit. Then they're like, oh, that's $250. You know, you have to think about what they're getting out of it. So as designers, always be real aware, because we're all inundated with emails all day long asking us to be a part of this, do that, do that. So just do your research and do your homework. I mean, I think that's really important.
And try to build your own relationships with the
Yeah,
vendors.
and building relationships with people.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys so much. What a wonderful presentation, and I hope you all learned a lot. I saw lots of note taking, so that's a great sign.